So, okay. Do you have any final words, Fernando, to start the dialogue?
No, I think we need to be flexible. We need to learn. I learned so much from reading about the Christian tradition, the Islamic tradition, which has strengthened and enriched my spiritual path. And I think we need to be understand that this unity and diversity that Thomas Merton talks about.
I have a quick question of clarification. So what constitutes the first part and the second part? Is it by chapter? I mean, it looks like chapter 9 is about in the middle. But,
So the second part will start on page 56, I believe.
okay, so
which is starts with meditation.
Okay, so chapter 14. Got it. Thank you.
Yeah.
Kathleen bowing in. May I? Thank you so much for this presentation, because it reminds me that I don't have to push aside the spirituality that I practiced for many years. I know that, but this brought me right back to that point. And I'm not going to talk for very long, but I want to say that for many years I practiced, I read the Philokalia, which was a book from the Russian Orthodox tradition, in which a young man goes on a search to find out what did St. Paul mean when he said, pray without ceasing. And so I did a practice for several years of the prayer of the heart. And that one was, Lord Jesus Christ, Son of God, have mercy upon me, a sinner. That's a big, long one, but that's what we did. And the whole idea there was that you do it 1,000 times a day, you do it 10,000 times a day. The whole idea is, that the prayer starts praying you. So there's that. And then I spent a lot of time in the years leading up to when I discovered Buddhism at an Eremitical community in the south of Texas called Lev Shemaya, House of Prayer. Lev Shemaya means listening heart. So you can imagine what kind of a place that was. It was a silent place. So you were on your own and with a few community things. So that kind of, which is kind of hilarious the way I ended up, because that's where I felt the most at home. And I have ended up in a living, being a novice monk in the Buddhist tradition, living at home with more people coming now with dementia and old age, and the inevitable after that. And then I was in a path of service that causes me to spend several hours every day communicating with dozens of people, either by email or by mail. So that's pretty hilarious. But Buddhism has shown me too, and this is the same message, that you can pray without ceasing. That can do that all day long. We learned that by mindful living, practicing gathas, all of that. And all of this God talk that you're going to have in Thomas Merton, don't let that discourage you, because it's the ultimate dimension. Every time you see God, you can say to yourself, the ultimate, if that's what you need to do. And I think then this book in particular will be more meaningful to you. Anyway, bowing out.
Sandra bowing in. Thank you, Fernando. Awesome job. And it is a great supplement to the actual read. In fact, Lynn, this is going to, go piggybacked basically on what you just said, because I still, with my post-traumatic church disorder, I still struggle with that. But what the translator that I use is I always exchange the word God for bodhicitta or spirit, that helps me kind of not get caught up in all that old, baggage that I still, carry around. Thank you both.
I have one more thing, and I hope that's the last thing. I did want to say that for many years I practiced centering prayer, which I noticed Fernando has introduced us to today. And I'm sure you all found it very familiar. And there's an organization called Contemplative Outreach, and I still belong to that. And I received training in Lectio Divina and centering prayer from Father Thomas Keating, who was another person very interesting to read. And I carry all this with me to this day into my Buddhist practice. Thank you.
This is Dave bowing in. Thank you, Fernando. That was very rich. A lot of things that I could pick out of that. But the thing that I keyed in on the most is the phrase, the dark night. Dark night of the soul. And seeing this as a path of transformation. And so part of my own path to meditation and the Dharma has been through my own lived experience of depression and despair and anxiety and that sort of thing. And originally with meditation, I first accessed it through a lot of the like mindfulness-based cognitive therapeutic presentations. John Kabat-Zinn, Full Catastrophe Living was actually the first real practice-based book that I worked with, and actually that was the first time I heard of Thich Nhat Hanh, first time I saw the word Dharma. But so the thing though that I wanted to mention is, and it's interesting that I had pulled this book out this morning about an hour before we got on this meeting. It's a book I've had for a few years now, and it's called Darkness Before Dawn, edited by Tammy Simon, and has entries from quite a few different people. But Tammy Simon in the introduction is talking about some stuff that she heard from Reginald Ray, referencing Chogyam Trungpa. And she's describing lying on the couch in a gray fog of depression herself, and she flashed on Reggie's comment about the intelligence of depression, and then recalled a statement I had heard about, attributed to Chogyam Trungpa Rinpoche. Depression is the closest conditioned state to the awakened state. Now, and usually when I quote that, I say, I forgot that I had changed this in my mind, but I usually say that Chogyam Trungpa said depression is the closest samsaric state to the awakened state. That's just me changing that up. And then in another spot, this is actually from the entry that Reginald Ray put in here. He says, one of the first talks I heard my teacher Chogyam Trungpa give was on the topic of depression. He said that of all the samsaric states, all of the ego-based states of non-enlightenment, depression is the most dignified because it's the most real and the most accurate. You see what life really holds ultimately. You see things as they are. You see the wishful thinking that we all indulge in all the time and how empty and fruitless it is. Seeing the pointlessness of it all is incredibly intelligent, though it can be absolutely terrifying, and I will verify it is. Enlightenment then is just one little step further. Instead of fighting this insight about the pointlessness of life, which is how depression maintains itself, you let go, accept it, and step into it. Then there is the most incredible feeling of relief and freedom and joy. Wow, I am free of myself. It is such a small step. When we are really depressed, we are so close. So that's actually something that I only just came across initially about 3 or 4 years ago. But the basic message in what I just read has been a deep source of hope for me through some very dark times of my own. So when you touched on that dark night piece there, that really resonates, and I thank you.
Thank you, Dave.
Keep talking, but I
David,
wanted to say
Katia?
there's a
Oh.
beautiful song, and it's by Lorena McKennitt, and it's called The Dark Night of the Soul. And I have that on my playlist, and it really resonates with me. And actually in that song, she uses the words of John of the Cross. And it's piercing, heart piercing, really. The Dark Night of the Soul, Lorena McKennitt.
Thank you, Fab.
John
Yes,
Barnier.
David? Oh, John. And after John, David Ketchum.
Thanks, Fernando, for presenting that. Coming from an Asian background, that familiar with Confucius, Taoism, and Buddhism, so not much about Christianity. But just like the story of the four people feeling that for different part of an elephant, I think all the religions around the world kind of have that common thing, just being seen through their view, through their custom. Even though in Buddhism we see a larger view, a larger part of the elephant, but we still not see the whole elephant till we get to enlightenment, I guess. So each religion seeing there's something, the common thing. I think a lot of religion have their own way of meditation, especially some of the indigenous Indian tribals here. I've seen some documentary that showing their way of meditation, and during that they have some sort of contemplation, insight, kind of investigation. So it's fairly familiar across religions and traditions. It's just they just call it different, but I think the meats and the process are pretty much the same. I'm curious also about how did they pick the word dark night? Is just something that we need to be careful when we enter those states? That reminds me of the Buddhist Surangama Sutra. They talk about the meditation process, and the later half of that sutra, the Buddha talked about the 50 states of the mind where we elevate through the meditation states, and we encounter something that we thought they were real, but they're actually a form of evil. When like for example, we start seeing all the five skandhas disintegrated and merged into just one, and the mind couldn't understand that, and basically the mind just visualized something that are demons, and he suggests, when we encounter those, we'll be careful so that we'll be able to get out and continue on the meditation process. So I don't know whether the dark night is kind of a similar things when we start getting into a higher state of concentration. John bowing out.
Elena bowing in. Thank you, John, and thank you, Fernando, for this wonderful presentation. But what you just brought in, John, reminds me of what Paul admonished, I think it was the Corinthians, when he says, he reminded us that we're not fighting against flesh and bone, that we are, when we go into a prayer or into meditation, we are fighting against the evil that lurks in the air or something like that. I'm just trying to translate from the Spanish version of this passage. So this is very similar to what you're mentioning with the Sarangama Sutra. That there are moments in which when you are deep into meditation, that's why awareness and mindfulness is so important, so that you can be alert to whatever disturbances come that are not what you are seeking, or what you should be, that you're going to benefit from. Elena, bowing out.
I think the concept of the dark night, and I'm not an expert, but it's that you come in contact with the ultimate, and the ultimate is light, and it's so bright that it blinds you, so that you become, everything becomes dark until you are able to assimilate yourself with the ultimate, and then you can see light. So you have to go through this process of going through this dark night in which you find yourself that you are not a person, you are not who you think you are, but you are part of something else that is bigger. And when you become part of that, that is your journey through the dark night.
Ruth?
Ruth bowing in, right. I'm going to piggyback on Fernando that it seems that what is being here called the dark night, which could be considered the obstacles in the way of our spiritual path, are very much stepping stones. And if we turn away from them, we are doing ourselves a great disservice, I think. The awareness and the mindfulness that Elena mentioned is very important at these times. But to see them as something that should be avoided or turned away from is falling into this dichotomy rather than an equanimous view of the world. And to embrace that, Thich Nhat Hanh talks about a lot about, embracing that negativity and embracing our fears and embracing that. And it does take a lot, and a lot of awareness, a lot of groundedness, a lot of openness to unity. There's the word unity, because in that perspective, there really is no dark or light. And I think this analogy of the brightness of the light creating darkness really speaks to that, that there is no difference. Just as samsara and nirvana, without samsara, you can't. So, and I do understand what was said earlier is that if we meet this darkness and we're not prepared, it can be catastrophic. But if we can prepare ourselves and work on preparing ourselves in very small ways on things that are just a little bit irritating and be able to accept those things, those little itty bitty negatives that come into our life. And if we really start with our meditations on bringing them forth, then step by step, we can, bring in things that are a little more significant, I guess, a little more impacting on our psyche, until we can get to the point that when the larger things come to us, the dark nights of the soul, then we have had practice to deal with them. But yeah, so this is Ruth bowing out.
Thank you, Ruth.
I think
Anyone else?
David was trying to
Theo?
say something what I was saying.
I'm sorry? No, no, he said no. Teo?
Hello, family. Yes, I just want to piggyback really briefly. Thank you first and foremost to Fernando for that presentation. I want to piggyback on something that Ruth just mentioned, and that is the non-duality, right, of samsara and nirvana. That yes, Thich Nhat Hanh does point to being that as one, as in his book No Mud, No Lotus. And what I also want to emphasize is that I tell my students in my sangha that in order to embark on this journey, you really have to have courage. You have to be courageous to face that darkness, quote unquote darkness, because that is where the healing is found. In being able to Jiso, dive to the depths of hell until every prisoner is free, right? And that's a metaphor for us diving to the depths of hell until we become free, as well as then, to help others do the same. But this is absolutely a courageous path. It's not for the meek. And I think that we should remember that, acknowledge that when fear does arise, or we know that we have ways of distracting ourselves, and that distraction is not only through unwholesome means, as whatever it may be, drugs, alcohol, shopping, any distractions that we might find, but we can also distract ourselves in what we might deem to what we might see as wholesome. We can distract ourselves with in volunteering and altruism, and even in good books.
Right. Yes, that's true.
And therefore, why sitting and the practice of sitting without distraction is really a courageous one, and a path towards healing.
Thank you, Teo. So we are beyond our time by 5 minutes, and some of our friends have not spoken. So if anyone else would like to share, this is the time. Yes, Bremer.
Mike Bramer from Springfield, Missouri, and I'm an absolute novice. After 8 years of my Buddhist practice, I feel like I'm still just beginning to learn.
Yes.
But where did David? Oh, and David Ketchum is my spirit guide. You'll see his picture down there. He is at our Buddhist temple in Springfield, Missouri. Springfield, Missouri actually has a Buddhist temple in it. It's a miracle. I lived there for 70 years before I discovered there was a Buddhist temple in Springfield. But Fernando, I read years ago this book by Thomas Merton as part of my search, if you will, and it didn't really register on me how valuable it was until I listened to your presentation this morning, because I have been a Christian all my life and prayed and prayed and prayed and reached points where I found it just very frustrating. In fact, someone mentioned centering prayer. I used that as a tool for a while until I started studying Buddhism and learning what prayer really meant by the meditation process. People ask me now that what my religion is, and I tell them I'm practicing Buddhist, and they say, well, what is meditation all about? And I said, well, you know, do you pray? And I said, it's really the first authentic way of praying that I've ever run across in my life. I was taught to pray for my own benefit, to undo things that I had done to save me from hell and damnation. And I don't want to have that problem anymore with it. That's why I say what I'm giving is a very simplistic comment, but to the value that the Buddhist practice has been to me personally, and what I have learned about being even a better Christian, if you will, if you want to fold it into that, because I don't have any problem with Christianity. What I have problems with is the way I learned Christianity, and what I did with the tools I was being taught at that point. So I thank you all for letting me share in this, and I thank David for giving me for guiding me into this, as among many other things we're doing now. And but he is at the temple. You can see the temple right behind him, and that's not a picture that he superimposed on his Zoom. That's actually the inside of the temple right now.
Oh, beautiful.
Beautiful place. Thank
Thank you,
you.
Mike. Anyone else? Okay. So, again, Fernando, thank you so much. This has been really a wonderful, wonderful presentation that has shed so much light on our practices and the different ways of practicing, and how we can be enriched from our traditions as we know them, and bringing new traditions as we have with Buddhism, and allowing them to be one within us, because there is no duality. It's just oneness. So now, just as a reminder, we will meet again on April the 3rd, and Fernando is going to regale us with the second part of the book. So I hope to see you then. And I hope that this has been, again, an enriching experience and a touch to the heart, like it's been for me. Thank you so very much. And it was great seeing you all. Fab?
Reciting the sutras, practicing the way of awareness gives rise to benefits without limit. We vow to share the fruits with all beings. We vow to offer tribute to parents, teachers, friends, and numerous beings who give guidance and support along the path.
Thank you all. Have a wonderful, wonderful rest of the month. Enjoy yourselves.
Thank you.
Welcome spring.